Welcome to the BlackBerry Central Podcast, episode number 5. Today I'm joined by Scott and Sacha. Today we're changing things up a little bit, going on a Saturday instead of a Sunday. Podcast is going to be available at 12:30 today. You can download the audio on the site as well in case you didn't want to watch the video. But let's get started. And I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was the BlackBerry Venice. Today's podcast is going to be really device-oriented. Let's speak a bit about Venice release, the OS, the price. When are we going to see it? What are our impressions of it? So I detailed some of the stuff about the Oslo, but there's a few details we could share about the Venice. And the first thing would probably be that the code name is Venice internally. We originally saw the BlackBerry Milan was codenamed back in, I think, 2011, 2012. And things changed a little bit. We went from Milan to Visa Victoria, and now we're in Venice. Milan, of course, is sort of an industrial city in Italy. And now we go to Venice, which is also another city, also in Italy. So it's interesting to see that they're going with that sort of analogy when it comes to the device. What do you guys think of that name? Is that a cool code name? I don't think it's a release-worthy name, but what do you think?
Yeah, they just pick names for that country. They do that for all the code names. They just pick a category and they name it after that for a certain type of device, like QWERTY keyboard device or, the first touchscreen devices.
Yeah, like London, Lisbon. We had the
There's probably not that much thought behind the name, but yeah.
It's because they're going with that analogy of different names like Classic, Passport, describing the device. So it'll be interesting to see what they actually calling it.
Well, the Passport's the final name, like Leap.
Yeah.
So you're not sure what the name will be.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see what they actually do call it in the end, because I firmly believe it'll be some kind of indicator of what demographic they're going to market the device for.
It's sort of annoying with the new naming. They've got rid of the old system with the Z10, Z30, and they've changed it to things like Passport and Leap. It's a bit more confusing. I liked the system before. It was easy to track where they thought it was priced, what range it was. Like Q5 is meant to be a little bit worse than Q10 and so forth.
Yeah. That's a mixed opinion.
Yeah, I totally disagree with it. Actually, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I think I hated the alphanumeric naming convention. I did a full article on it and why I feel that the current naming convention is better, because once we get into like the Z3, what's better? Is Z10 better than Z3?
Yeah, for sure. But I think they should just pick one or the other. The annoying thing is that they change from one to the other one. And Nokia did this a lot when they were making their phones. They had so many different naming systems and they changed them every 2 or 3 years. It's just very hard to keep track. And you end up getting the same numbers coming up again.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't be so bad if they did it within one individual device line. So
like if they switch from BB10 to BB, like BB11 or something, and then they can change the name, something like that.
Yeah. But and that was another issue. Is when BB, and we were talking about code or naming the OSs, and my big thing is when we hit BB 10.9, what happens when we go to BB 11, and what is the perception there about the devices of the time? Will they be able to go on to BB 11? And a lot of people might not perceive that, when the reality is, I'm sure that they'll be able to roll over.
Yeah.
Well, they have some history with that, with like Playbook, who didn't go past 2, and that'll happen again, I guess, if, to save money, they just will cut off some products.
So jumping back to Venice, we're told that the release date is supposed to be October 15th, which is kind of an interesting release date, and we'll talk about the time frame in a minute. Obviously 10.3.2 is coming preloaded on this device. And then we look at cost a little bit, which I want to talk more in depth a little bit later. But this device could end up being like $700 to $800 Canadian, just based on the production value of it, the partnership, as well as just being BlackBerry and having to charge that higher price model for your devices in order to make sure you
Well,
make.
it's that and the currency has been dropping recently as well. I think it's down to 82 US cents or something. Is
Like
it 80?
a lot of things factor into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, what do you think is a good price for something like the slider, being more high end, similar to Passport, but just really different in design?
Well, they always start up high, and the real price is when it settles down after a few months. You can see what people start pricing it at. I don't think that BlackBerry actually gets all that money that it starts out at. That's just the retail price, and there's some margin in that for the carriers and so forth. But
Yeah.
the price they're actually getting could be a lot less than that.
Yeah,
I think the carriers might demand a high premium just for having them on the shelf space. Like here in Australia, they don't put BlackBerry on the shelf anymore. They just don't bother with it.
Right.
Yeah, I think the price is definitely going to have to settle a bit. $700-800 range is extremely high. At that point, you're almost like, well, should I even bother with the regular BlackBerry and we're not go Porsche design, right? For but so I think I could foresee it settling around the 600 probably range, a couple $100 down after probably 3 to 4 months time after launch.
Right.
But I like the timing because if we hear launch for October 15, that actually puts it in prime time for the Christmas rush. It actually really is a perfect time for that aspect.
Yeah.
And that also coincides with time when you can see a little bit of a discount on the pricing of it. So maybe we might be able to see some guys getting Visa or Venices for Christmas out there.
Yeah, well, I think they've learned their lesson from when they launched the Z30. I think they launched a little bit too early for Christmas. It was September 27th or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they need to push it back a little bit further to hit the Christmas budget.
Yeah. Moving forward to the Oslo, which has been, it's gone everywhere. It's been on the Financial Post. It's been on Gizmodo. It's been on Mobile Syrup. Pretty much all the bigger tech sites have picked it up, and they're sort of going on about it. I've seen it on some investment websites, advising some investors to sort of ignore the device for the time being. It's been really interesting to see it getting picked up and people really questioning it. The first thing I wanted to ask is, what do you guys think of the design? It's really it's a Passport, but it's got a unique spin to it.
Yeah, it's an improvement. They've had time to improve it, so
Right.
they've made it like their competitors, more rounded. Everyone else is doing the rounded, so that's what people are expecting.
Yeah. And you use a Passport right now, right?
Oh, sorry? What I'm on?
Yeah, you use a Passport right now, right?
No, it's a Q10.
Oh, Q10, okay. So is the Oslo something you would buy compared to the original Passport design?
Yeah, I think I don't know until I actually see it up close, but
Yeah.
it looks nice.
I'm a fan of the Oslo design. When I first saw the Passport, it was a little bit squarish for my liking. Kind of got used to it. Then the AT&T one came out, and I was like, okay, looks good. But then I'm like, well, it's a bit too rounded. But the Oslo, if you notice, it's actually a merge of both.
Yeah.
The top end of it is square, and the bottom is rounded. So actually gives that nice form factor to it. Huge fan of the silver. 2 of my 3 vehicles are silver, so I'm a huge fan of silver in general. So I like that. Titanium look. So it'd be nice for more devices kind of that color scheme. Actually, I think it's really gives it a high end look to it. You know what I mean? Like that stainless steel look gives it a higher end look to it. So, but question is like, what is the Oslo for? If it looks like a Passport, it walks like a Passport, talks like a Passport, and it's got the same internals.
Yeah, isn't everyone saying it's for China, the Chinese market?
Yeah, like it's unique. Like I'll get to the second point here. Release date as stated in the original post, June 30th. Who knows if that's 100% accurate? When I had originally broke the news about the Oslo on March 31st, I was told that it was going to begin testing in June. So it's interesting to see that I go from hearing testing in June to release at the end of June. So I'm not sure if that's a mix
Well,
up there or if it's
I
just
suppose it depends what sort of testing, because carrier testing takes about a month. They give it to the carrier a month before, and then it's approved, and then they can sell it.
so it could
So if they
be
start of June, it could come out end of June.
end of June. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the other question is how much testing is actually required if it's a passport in a different case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Just with the new firmware build, they just have to send it to the carrier. They give them about a month
Yeah.
just to play with it. There's no reason they shouldn't approve it, though.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to definitely note was I know a lot of websites actually picked up the article and stated it to be a Passport successor, as in Passport 2. And that's grossly erroneous in terms of what we're actually looking at here. This device is in no way or shape a Passport 2. So I wanted to clear that out of the way before moving on to what the device is for. Originally, I heard that it was for the European market. Second, I heard it was for the Chinese demographic, but not just them. I guess this is more of a sort of an Asia European thing in comparison to being a North American device like the original Passport. So, it's really interesting to see where this thing's going to go. I mean, it would make a lot of sense to go into China if they were to dumb the specs down a little bit, offer it at a lower price, throw it in China, and just try to get some more market share that way. Do you guys think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. China is a massive market. You know, I don't know how many billion people are over there, but it's crazy. The issue will be the back end of the BlackBerry and allowing the Chinese government access, because they'll want access to all the secure side of it, much like what they had to do with UAE, I believe it was off the top of my head a few years ago. So that will be one of the sticking points. But market or device wise, I think, yeah, you know, cheaper grade housing, maybe lower the specs a little bit, but not too much, because you don't want to kill the complete user feel of the device.
Right.
And yeah, hit into the Chinese market, much like Apple's trying to do right now as well.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see where things go. I mean, we're almost into May. Another week and a half, basically. We're into May, and then we'll see June. We'll start, I think, at the beginning of the month of June, we'll start to see and understand what this thing's for, where it's going. This is, yeah, at Mobile World Congress, they said, all right, we've got 4 devices on the roadmap from this point forward to the end of the year, and that's the Leap, that's the Slider, the Keian, and then all they said about the Oslo was and a keyboard based device, and they didn't really say anything after that. They didn't say a name, they didn't say what it would look like, what form factor, just that it had a keyboard. So it's kind of cool to see that they're doing this, but in a lot of ways it's really confusing. And I know a lot of the comments we got on the site and on Twitter and on some of the other sites too, people are just really confused about what the heck this thing's for.
Yeah, I think that will be the biggest thing that they'll have to market is what it's for and how it differentiates itself from the Passport, to make sure that people don't confuse it as Passport 2.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately, maybe the Passport is much more successful than what everybody gives the credit for, and maybe BlackBerry is just trying to capitalize on that success and the current trend and the momentum around the Passport, because it definitely is a different device. Like, there's no other device like it out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think you just look at the other countries that don't have the Passport yet, and it might be just for those countries.
Right.
I don't know if they'd compete with the Passport. Like, I think it's just for Asian countries. It's probably what it's for.
Yeah.
And then specs, it could be dumbed down, and it's supposed to ship with 10.3.2, which when we get to it in a minute, it kind of messes with the timeline of what we got. So but let's talk about Keian really quickly. That's something that a lot of people have been asking about. Few people have had the opportunity to actually see the devices and see what they're kind of playing with. One thing that's notable is from my understanding, it's not going to be a Passport-based model that everyone's sort of hoping for. I think we're going to be looking at a touchscreen. For a few reasons. One, it's very coveted sort of secret in that sense that there's no details. They didn't even say it had a keyboard. They didn't say it was all touch. Nothing. But if you look at the timeline of the Porsche devices, we go from the 9981, which was a physical keyboard device with the trackpad, of course the 9900 successor in some sense, same internals, but Porsche out. And then we went on to the 9982, which was essentially a Z10 repackaged. And then, of course, we had the 9983 last year, which was a repackaged Q10. So we go keyboard, touchscreen, keyboard. Are we going to go back to touchscreen again? Who knows at this point? Are you guys, I know Porsche devices are out of most people's reach, but is there a certain form factor that you guys want to see?
I personally think they should keep with the keyboard one time and repackage the classic, because I think the the big demographic that's going to go out there and buy the Porsche design BlackBerrys right now are going to be those super well-paid CEO types that can afford those devices, and that's what they're going to be looking for, and that's exactly who the classic was built and marketed for. So I think that's where they should go with it. Will they? We'll see. The keyboard touch thing makes sense. So we could see a redesigned Z30 maybe, but that'll probably tick off a lot of the user fan base.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
yeah, I think for sure they. Oh yeah, for sure they should focus on the keyboard, because that's where they differentiate with the other competitors.
Yeah,
just makes sense.
Yeah. So we'll see.
I don't think they really follow any patterns like touch keyboard. I think that's just an accident, really.
Yeah, or maybe they'll pull one on us and launch the Venice via Porsche design.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Or even Keian is maybe they do the Venice and then they do a Venice Porsche kind of thing,
Yeah, or both at the same time or something. You never know, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting times. It's been unpredictable as of late. Like, we didn't predict Venice to be a slider at NWC. So.
Yeah. So moving on to 10.3.2, and this is when we start to tie in the device timeline. So it was originally supposed to be out June, July, sort of that summer time frame. The reason for that is it's supposed to parallel a major device, which was supposed to be the slider. But since the Oslo is out basically at the beginning of July, end of June, that's really along the lines of 10.3.2. And since it's supposed to ship with that, it makes you really wonder when the Venice is supposed to be out, in October, a few months later. So it kind of screws with the timeline a bit, because normally when you launch an OS like this, you launch it with the device that it's meant to. So essentially the hardware, the difference is there, having that extra keyboard in there. So you have the virtual hardware. You have to tie that in. And normally when they do that, they do it with the new OSs. So it's weird to see that they want to do Oslo around the time of 10.3.2 and leave Venice a little bit. And maybe they're doing that so that way they have a chance to allow the OS to mature a little bit. So that way when they launch the device that's meant to utilize the OS as much as it can, it's really tricky right now. Not a lot of it makes too much sense.
But is there really that many changes in 10.3.2? Like, are they device-specific changes, or is it just bug fixes?
Well, it's really divided. 10.3.2, of course, still supports the older sort of almost legacy BlackBerry 10 devices. We go all the way back to the Z10, and it's still being supported. But at the same time, when we go to the Venice and we talk about the processor that's in that, and we start getting ready for that like 64-bit architecture to it, and we get ready for that 8-core sort of power to it, that's when 10.3.2 really comes in, because it's not only software optimizations, but it really comes down to the hardware when it comes to that device. To speak on the sort of processing power in that, in one of the previous rumor roundups, and I really recommend everyone reads them because there is a lot of hints in them. there's a lot of details about OSs and certain things that we know. But if we talk about the chipset in that, it's supposed to, like the slider itself is supposed to have sort of like a 2K screen, at 2560 by 1440, playing off the Passport a little bit. Part of that means bumping up that processor, going from what we have, like sort of like an 801 in the Passport, and bumping it up to almost like an 810. The thing is, QNX is really, really the best OS that are sort of, like real-time OS that you want to launch something like 10.3.2 with, taking advantage of something like a quad-core, 8-core processor. The reason for that is I think it's called BMP, which is bound multiprocessing. QNX is really the only OS out there that can actually take advantage of having all those cores. If you look at Apple and you look at even Samsung a little bit, and you see they try to do that 64-bit stuff and try to go into that more advanced architecture, but their devices can't take advantage of having all those cores like QNX can. What you have in the medical field, where QNX is constantly running, is taking advantage of its processor and making sure that there's no downtime in between. It can assign certain rules to different cores and function based off each other. And that's what we would see with 10.3.2 in the slider, where QNX is able to take advantage of BMP and make sure that it can take each core and use it. So that means increasing device speeds by like 100% compared to what we have now. The Passport's fast, but to jump something up, with 3 gigs of RAM, and then you add that different processor in there, then you have just this insanely fast device that no one else can offer, because no one else has QNX. This is a BlackBerry thing. So it's really messy right now. But 10.3.2 and the slider is the only real device that can take advantage of that architecture. I don't know. I know it's a topic that's above a lot of people's head. Most of it's above mine. So it's going to be cool to see what they do. Like, what can they take advantage of? What can they really do with it? What's the point? What's the advantage of having all that processing power, right?
That's definitely the thing, though. There's all this new power available, but what's going to take advantage of that?
Yeah,
because you have these 64-bit processors already in other phones, and they're not really doing anything different.
Right, exactly. And then people can call into question at that point, okay, what about QNX hypervisor? Can we see dual boot or sort of an OS like Android OS masked with a BlackBerry 10 core to it? And we start to see that multiple layers of OS in there, which QNX is capable of, and then adding that architecture in there to make sure that it would be able to run those both incredibly well. You start to question what they are doing. It's very back-end stuff. I don't know half the stuff that's going on when it comes to the OS. It's very tricky right now. Go ahead.
I think we're going to see some serious upgrades to the Android runtime, because that's one of the things that takes up a lot of juice out of the phones right now, is that Android runtime. So maybe we'll see some serious upgrades to it that will finally appease everybody that are running the Android apps.
Yeah. So it's confusing. Is an Android BlackBerry 10 device something you guys are interested in at all?
Well, no. I think for the average user, Android's probably one of the selling points, but I think all the advantages of the 64-bit processor is more of a niche market. It's more for marketing.
Yeah.
Having a 64-bit processor, because all the other phones have it, you have to compete with them.
Yeah.
It'll be very good for me, but the average user, I don't think they'll notice that much.
Yeah, I have no interest in an Android phone that's running BlackBerry 10 type features on it at all. The BlackBerry 10 core system is what I like. The fact that we can run Android apps is just a sheer added bonus. So hopefully they keep it running the way it is right now, or at least have the option. If they want to go that way, at least have the option. A core BlackBerry 10 or Android Berry or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I know personally I would not. If they went that road, I'd probably stop buying phones at that point. I'd hang on to my passports and just say, I'm going to stick with this until I die at this point, because I wouldn't be interested at all in any form of Android thing. Even with BlackBerry security added, it's still, I don't know. It's
the problem is they're never going to offer a choice. They're going to choose one or the other to simplify it for the users. And if they, even if they offer both of them, they're only going to work on the ones that most users go to. And if most users choose Android, to get the Play Store inbuilt and everything like that, they're just going to abandon the other one. So you're going to end up with, Android if they choose to have two options.
Yeah, and then
I'd just go all in Android then. If they did go that way, I'd say okay, fine. To me, it's no point. I'd just go grab a Samsung S6. Be done with it.
Well, yeah, for sure. They're getting rid of what they differentiate with. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like getting rid of the keyboard.
Yeah. And then let's talk about Samsung and BlackBerry. This ties back into the Venice a little bit. They launched the Sachesi tablet and the secure stuff with the secure calling and the encryption there. But if we talk about their partnership specifically with Samsung in terms of hardware, Scott, why don't you just sort of state how much it actually costs to make one of these edge screens that's going to be on the
the S6 Edge. So the screen accounts for 29% of the total cost of the full device, which is an atrocious amount. Which in dollars, it's about $85 a screen. So it's a lot of cash.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
Well, it's a trend. Phones now. I mean, we started off with plastic screens on phones when they didn't have multi-touch, and the screens have been getting more expensive ever since. That's what people see all the time when they're looking at their phone. It's the most important part of their device. So it's just going up and up.
Yeah, for sure. But when you're looking at the usual screen right now on the normal size Apple, the regular size Apple, and just the regular S6, you're talking around the $40-$50 range. And that's even just getting them replaced on your own. So that's almost a full 100% jump there in cost.
Yeah. So in terms of screen for this device, that's pricey, especially on BlackBerry's belt. So it's kind of weird but cool to see that they're working with Samsung in this sense, because maybe it'll help take away some of that heaviness in terms of the overall device cost.
Yeah, the interesting thing, which we'll never know, is BlackBerry getting that screen at $85 a pop, or is BlackBerry getting that screen at $90 or $100 a pop? What's the difference? What's the cost of BlackBerry for that screen compared to the cost of Samsung? If they are getting it for $85 a pop, what is BlackBerry giving in turn to Samsung is the other end of that equation, which is interest to me, but I'm sure we'll never know.
Right.
Well, Samsung's getting in high quantity, so they can get it cheaper.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but that $85 is the cost of Samsung. Is what they're producing those screens at right now.
And it's not just the cost that ties into that too. It's actually manufacturing a display that wraps around the corners a little bit. That too in itself is a newer technology that's probably not perfected. Nothing's really perfected, and they're moving fast with it. They pumped out the S6 Edge. It looks really great. But I've heard a lot of crap about it in terms of malfunction, scratches.
Yeah, they're like guinea pig devices.
Yeah.
They're experimenting with them, and they need to get more experiments done before, LG, who they're competing with, who's also doing these flexible screens and curved edges.
Yeah, but keep in mind, Samsung's also doing it on a larger scale with their curved TVs and such too, right? So they're not just experimenting with it within the phone device, and they're across the board in so much electronics. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing it soon in their tablets.
Yeah. So hopefully by the time we see the Venice, we see some perfection in terms of that. Because I find that BlackBerry users can be very, very anal about their devices in terms of, malfunctions or little scratches here and there. Some people care less than others, but I find people are very, very vocal about it as well. So I think that if we did see anything wrong with it, it would be very, very vocalized. The other thing about their partnership when it comes to the Venice is supposedly the chip could come from them as well. Sort of an in-house sort of thing. Like we saw Samsung ditch, I believe they ditched the 810 in favor of their own in-house chip.
Well, there's the whole issues regards to the 810 overheating, which Whether it's confirmed or not, there's a lot of rumors about the A10 overheating, and that's most likely why Samsung went away from it. Another problem or another thing would probably be just cost. Since the device does cost so much, they're trying to lower costs, right?
Yeah.
Well, they've been doing that for a while. Samsung's been releasing, the Qualcomm in some markets and their own chip in other markets. And if you look at the BlackBerry firmwares, they're even testing Exynos chips before. They've abandoned it now, but they were testing it
before. So it's supposed. So we're gonna see hopefully the chip and the screen from Samsung. In terms of hardware, other than that, it doesn't seem to be a whole lot Samsung. BlackBerry has their manufacturing methods. Of course, we're going to see a touch-enabled keyboard. Maybe they'll drop that front-facing speaker. We don't know yet. Jumping back to the timeline quick, if we were to take a look at the year in terms of 12 months, and we look at Leap being announced, so we go January, February, March. So there's third month in, we announced the BlackBerry Leap. And then we go April, May, June, and we look at the Oslo release. You'll start to see a trend in the sort of the timing. So we go 3 more months, and we go into September, October. September is when the Keian is supposed to make its appearance. So again, there's about a 2-month in between the actual month that it's announced. But the weird part is the Venice in October. So instead of adding, another 2 months, putting us into December, which wouldn't make too much sense. And like you guys had mentioned, getting in at, roughly October gives you a good time frame to get in there at Christmas. So it's weird that we go, 2 months Leap, 2 months Oslo, 2 months Keian, and then we go 1 month later and we're right into the Venice. So that's, it's all weird right now. None of it makes a whole lot.
I think the one you have to exclude from all the timelines is the Porsche device, because the Porsche device doesn't really have to be on a timeline. People who purchase it aren't bound events. They don't have, particular budgets they have to meet, like Christmas. So they can launch that anytime.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. So it's, I don't know. It's a weird time frame, but yeah, like what you said does make a lot of sense. There's people who aren't. It's not on the same level as the other devices. Essentially, we're looking consumer, enterprise, and then we have that step up with that the sort of the affluential sort of money guys who can afford that stuff. So yeah, it's really messy right now. We'll see next month where things go. Definitely stay tuned to BlackBerryCentral.com for all these updates. We definitely have some more stuff about Oslo to release, some back stuff, looking at the back of the device, and hopefully some more spec stuff will pop up soon enough. Other than that, subscribe to the BBM channel for sure, or shoot us a tweet about today's show at the BB Central on Twitter. I wanted to jump over and just sort of talk about Sachesi and sort of talk about the program there. That's something it's sort of a talking point for today's episode. And I know a lot of people, Scott and myself included, appreciate and definitely use that program nearly on a monthly basis at this point, sometimes even on a weekly basis when it gets into some of the OS stuff. The first thing I wanted to ask is what drove you to create the program?
Okay, well, originally I made a program called Dingleberry, which you probably know about, for rooting playbooks. And I used some of the same code then to make a program to look up firmware, because it shared some of the same code. I could reuse some of it. And this was just for my own personal use. So I was just searching up the latest firmware, downloading it, and then installing it. And because I'd been using a different method for Playbook because it was a bit easier, but they made it a bit harder for BB10, so I had to develop a program for it. And yeah, I was just using it for personal use. And then eventually some people noticed that I was using this tool because I showed a screenshot of it, and then they're like, how come you can't release that? So I decided to polish it up a little bit, and then I released it, and then I slowly worked on it to make it more user-friendly because people had a lot of trouble navigating through it.
Sure.
And yeah, just develop from there.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I know I use it mostly for OS stuff, but I know a lot of people use it for the OS. Looking up OSs and grabbing links and stuff like that. So it's definitely got a lot of use, that's for sure. But when you did decide to release it publicly, did you think it was going to be, as widely used as it is today? I know when it comes to us at BlackBerry Central, Crackberry, Berryflow, N4BB, all the big guys really try to push for that program for people to be using that comparison to Chrome and some of the other methods out there for side loading or whatever it might be. Did you think it was going to be as big as it is today?
I thought it was going to be more of a small side loading sort of application, for side loading firmware. I didn't realize normal average people would use it. I thought it would just mostly be for Crackberry fans, people who hang on the forums a lot. That's where I uploaded originally.
And obviously, we're looking at an app that looks onto some of BlackBerry's servers, sort of monitors a few things. How have they responded to the application overall? Because I know there was some stuff going on in the back end between you and BlackBerry trying to help fix things, and then being almost turned down a little bit. But maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, the individual employees seem to like it. I mean, some of them even use it because they don't really have an internal tool that's similar. They have something if they have root access, they have an autoloader which they use. But yeah, just for general side loading and installing stuff, a lot of the employees actually seem to use it for some reason. And for the company though, the company doesn't seem to like it as much. They seem to try and discourage my developing of it. And when I released it for BlackBerry on the phone, they didn't like that at all. So they banned me. So
Yes.
yeah, it's just a different policy with the company and the actual employees.
Yeah. So, and the app did go down there for a bit. What was the return contingencies to get that app back up there? I know you had to remove a bunch of stuff.
Is it up right now? I think it's down. I got it back up by getting someone else to upload on their vendor account, and it got taken down straight afterwards.
Okay, because I know it
I
did.
tried to put it up again, but they've done this thing called drafting it, where they set it marked as draft instead of approved to pretend they never approved it,
Right,
and it's just their way of rejecting it without giving a reason.
right. Yeah, it's interesting, and I know that you had essentially tried to say, "Hey, here's some backdoor stuff," just so you're aware, right? I mean, that was your sort of.
Oh yeah. So I was just playing around with the vendor world and other websites on BlackBerry, and I noticed a very huge flaw just by changing the URL. And I could see all the account details of every single vendor, and it sort of scared me a bit because all my personal details are on there. So I told BlackBerry and also delved a little bit deeper, and I found a lot more exploits, things that you'd see in a small business website maybe, but not a big company. So it shocked me a little bit, and I told them all the exploits I found, and I found it's really hard to actually get through to anyone in BlackBerry. So yeah, I had to actually hunt around for a person who would take it seriously at first.
Yeah.
And even when I found someone who would take it seriously, it took a few months before they actually fixed it. And it was only after I made it public, I announced that I'd found issues, and then they decided to fix it.
Yeah, and that's almost embarrassing when you're a large security forward company to have such simple flaws. Yeah. So, but what's next for you? Do you have anything else planned? Like, Sachesi's been such a hit. Is there anything else on your book for this year, next year?
Well, I've been let down by BlackBerry quite a lot with
Yeah.
Sachesi, so and especially with the exploits, I've actually got no way of talking to BlackBerry anymore because one of the guys I was talking to, one of the employees, I now have to sign an NDA just to talk with him. They won't let him talk to me. It's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't work on any exploits because I can't tell them. And they've also banned my BlackBerry ID. So if I delete my BBM, I lose my account. I have to start a new one. I haven't done that yet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a bit annoying. I've been turned off by that.
Yeah, yeah. And As far as I know, you're not the only one who's been barred out a little bit. I know there's been some other devs who found some stuff even in the sort of like Cascade side of things as well. A lot of flaws in there. And trying to bring those forward and trying to ask about advancements and fixing things, they get locked out too. And I mean, not to the degree that you've probably been treated, but in a lot of ways they get pushed back a little bit. And then that's definitely unfortunate. Yeah, because there's people like yourself interested and totally willing to help them out, but they just seem very distant, and that's definitely very weird.
Yeah, it's very strange for a big company. Like if I send an exploit to Google, it's probably fixed the next day. And these exploits that I sent them are very easy. I could have fixed them. They're like a few lines of code to change, and it's on a website, so you can just update it straight away. You don't have to send out, updates to every user or something like that. It's a very easy fix. And the fixes they originally did were just really crude fixes. They didn't actually solve the problem at all. It's just a different way of doing it, and you get the same issue again. So it's just so annoying that you don't let you fix it.
Yeah. So would it be? Sorry.
I was just going to say it was exactly the same issue with Dingleberry. I mean, that was an exploit that they were told about almost a year before the Dingleberry came out, and 6 months after they first heard about it, they were notified of it. They came out with a crude fix of just disabling Samba when you do an update, which didn't fix it at all. So the only way for them to actually fix a problem is by exploiting it publicly. It's the only way they'll care about it. It's just not how they should be running it.
Right. So would it be fair to say that after this experience with them, that you're not exactly too interested in helping out anymore or trying to create something else?
Yeah, well, I'm still working on Sachesi, and I don't think I'll do any other projects though. But I'll just stick to Sachesi.
Yeah, interesting. But I know one thing that some of our viewers are definitely going to want us to say is definitely an appreciation for the hard work that you have put into that program, releasing it for free, and allowing people to use the program every day. Whether they're sideloading something or just looking at the servers. We definitely all appreciate the work that you've put in.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that it's open source, of course, so you can change anything you want and improve it. Especially if you find bugs in it, just send a pull request through GitHub, and I'll add it in.
Yeah, and we've actually linked directly to your GitHub in the description for today's podcast. So if there's anyone interested in checking it out, definitely do that. I want to wrap up today's podcast. I definitely appreciate both of you guys taking the time today to hang out and talk about some of the cool stuff this year. We'll see everyone, I believe it's May 2nd that we're back on our next podcast. Joining us, we have a developer. I'm not going to say who yet, but we're going to have a lot more to talk about by then. So thanks, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Saturday.
Have a good weekend.
All right.
See ya.
See you guys.